Recording in progress. We got our bot here with us. Wonderful. All right, everybody, welcome into the fifth dimension. I am joined once again by Laura Faye. This is her second time on the podcast. Laura, welcome back. It's great to reconnect and, just hold the space and see where we end up.
Yes, it's great to be back. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah,
a lot has changed since the last time we checked in.
Right. Well, it's fascinating because I think we established, I don't know what month it is. Maybe that was like 9 months ago. Okay, that was a lot longer than I had actually realized. So time is moving at a very interesting pace. The world appears on the surface chaotic, but there's a lot going on underneath the surface. So a lot of energies moving in a lot of different ways. So I guess we could just start. Something we were talking about is this has been a very, you said, I think, transformational few days in a sense for you. And it's time to get real. And I agree with you. It is time to get real. I've been in that mode, especially the last month or two, where all the illusions that I was holding on about self and reality just need to let go completely and not look back in a way. What's sort of the shift been like for you? Where have you been really aligning in terms of your own energy and what you're looking at?
I feel that the main energy right now is for people to start to let go of their old identities in a very major way. And that I mean by that in order to really get into the new earth frequency, in order to get where we're going, in order to make it through this shift, it's going to cost you your old self. And I feel that if that's not something that that you're ready to let go of completely, that's probably the biggest block that's facing anyone right now. Because in order to really let go of the old program, it's about really letting go of anything that was you that is no longer in alignment to the divine higher timeline that wants to unfold. So it is about ego death. It is about transcending. It's about self-transcendence. That's what I'm hearing. So we have to, when you look at the hierarchy of needs for a human being, and where I feel we almost are at is self-transcendence. And that is the peak of how you get into your crystalline light body. That's how you can access your DNA that was previously inaccessible. And that's where we're all going to have to make the big leap to get to in order to get onto the ascension path fully. And it feels that you may have some tests, because I will talk about me personally having some tests to start to see, am I going to be tricked and go back to something that was familiar, a pattern that was familiar, type of relationship that maybe I would have fallen for, or some kind of a behavior that was my old self, and not fall for that, because it's going to try to test you. The program, as you try to exit the matrix will try to entice you to come back at all, any possible way that it can test you. And I'm thinking of this scene in the Matrix where, I forget his name, but the one that turned on them and wanted to go back to sleep and take the blue pill, and you can't actually do that. It's impossible to do that. But that's probably going to be the test for a lot of people, is you're going to feel so outside of your comfort zone at some point on this journey that you're going to want to all of a sudden run back into your cave, into your comfort zone, and it's not going to be there. And it's a trick. And so facing that and knowing that might be a false light type of trick, because what's coming into right now is we're reliving the fall of Atlantis in a lot of ways. And what led to the fall of Atlantis was deception and false light. So whatever you can do to start to make decisions based upon how you're feeling in your body and your vessel is the best thing to do, because your thoughts can lie to you, and your old habitual subconscious thoughts and patterns, what you were programmed to believe, those can also lie to you. So what doesn't lie to you is your body's response And that's
Absolutely.
something that I feel is probably really the most strong type of mechanism to develop, is how you feel in your body, because that's not going to lie.
Yeah. When we listen to the heart, it's specifically in the direction that it's moving us towards. And it what you just described perfectly mirrors my own experience over the last, even just month, past couple weeks, where you recognize the old programs looking for ways to try and insert themselves into my day to day, whether it's thinking or temptations to go back towards what I think would be maybe more comfortable, or, oh, this is going, if I go back, if I think like this, or if I desire this, or if I stay attached in this way, in this relationship, oh, that's what you need to do. When in reality, when I sit down and listen to the heart, it says, no, just let go, surrender. That's old. That's not going to work. Because the more we try and cling, we're ultimately repelling, right? And we're getting rid of, uh, or I would say not getting rid of, but we are averting our own ascension in a lot of ways, right? And we're actually repelling it away when we cling to these old programs. And I think there is a big necessary surrender right now, and like a trust that we're going to be caught as we jump off the ledge into the complete unknown, right? We've entered the initiation phase of this journey, and there is no turning around. The old home is no longer existent. That's not home. There's a new definition of what home is, and it's not back there. It's only through going forward through the heart, gazing
Right.
directly into the unknown. So
Yes. And I feel like a lot of people, because what I'm getting here, I get a lot of I channel a lot for divine masculine energy. And we
mhm,
all have divine feminine and we have divine masculine energy.
yeah,
So whether you are male or female or whatever, it does not matter. It's about the energy. But it's about, really, a lot of divine masculine is about knowing exactly who you are and who your truest self is in your body,
yeah,
in your vessel, and embodying it, and being as strong as you can possibly be in yourself. So you would emanate yourself. You'll start to look like how you're supposed to look. You'll start to you'll naturally, your DNA, again, it starts to naturally adjust you physically to how you want to be. And what I get is that a lot of masculines are there, and what isn't in alignment is likely the environment around you. If
mm,
anything is off, you may know exactly who you are, but you don't feel that you're in the right place. So that's what I'm getting, is for a lot of people, is I know who I am, but it's not matching my surroundings. And so there's a feeling of attempting to go back to who you were before you knew who you were,
yeah,
is what I'm kind of getting. So it's this sense of, and I'll just give an example, as somebody that feels like they finally embody themselves, they start to dress the way that feels in alignment to them, they start to grow their hair out the way that it feels the best for them. And then all of a sudden, the environment starts to turn on that version of you, which is actually your most authentic self. But you want to go back to who you were before that, and it feels like you're trying on a false set of clothes or
mm,
a costume. And so what we're trying to do is get in total alignment in every possible way. And it's not only your physical self, it starts with your physical self, but it's also the environment, the friends around you, what you're doing every day, that type of thing, where you're living, where you're working,
yeah,
your day-to-day routine, your loop. So if your loop is still a program, that's what has to shift.
yeah.
And so it's about your entire life becoming in alignment to yourself.
Absolutely. Breaking that almost that need for a patterned loop, and sort of living in almost the spontaneity with each moment, and constructing whatever, wherever the heart leads you in that moment, to follow that and trust in that. And it's interesting because I've felt that. And also it's interesting. It's almost like you would think of it as opposites, but how these intertwine is very fascinating for me, to be in a need for hermit mode to really isolate and actually align inward with my own authentic self and truly be uh with me present fully. And there's a hermit mode that's necessary, but then also interchanging that with the need to come together with like a soul tribe and come together with the people who are going to be on this ascension path with us, right? And I think that's as we were talking before I hopped on. I'm not in South Dakota anymore. I'm in Montana, right? That's a physical move, a physical change that needed to take place for me to be, I felt like I was understanding myself on a deeper level, but the physical reality wasn't matching, right? And so what did I do? I'm in a new spot. Just so happens this is where the heart guided me. I couldn't have predicted this is where it would guide me, but it's where it did for now, right? And so it's been interesting for me to just watch my own energy and how do I be the hermit while also opening myself up enough to the level to where that soul tribe naturally flows in. And it doesn't necessarily need to be forced. In a way it finds me, right? And that's beginning to happen, I feel, it's very interesting. But as I'm also still very conscious about being in hermit mode and the need to, I would say, be conscious with my own energy and not engage in relationships that are going to be, uh, I guess, falling victim to my old patterns, right? Because those are going to come up, like you mentioned earlier. The temptation to re-enter the matrix comes back in all areas of our life. It's like, all right, we want new forms of relationship. Well, let me test you with an old type of relationship and see if you fall into that programming again, because it's what you're familiar with, right? We need to break that. I get comfortable within the uncomfortableness within ourselves ultimately. And I don't know, it's been fascinating to try and navigate and ultimately balance those two energies, because they're perceived as, I would say, totally opposite. You have the hermit, and then you have, I would say, a social butterfly type of energy where you're kind of giving yourself to other people. But in a lot of ways, there is this dual intertwining and unity, I think, that needs to take place between the two. And maybe for a lot of people, I think, and then for me in particular, it's been a learning experience to do that. I think it's a challenging path and to undertake. And one, just the willingness to be the hermit, and then two, have the conscious awareness to know what types of relationships are naturally coming in and aren't part of that old programming and that false light, like you mentioned.
Yes, and it's also this sense that you will know what's not for you possibly more strong than you'll know what is for you.
Mm,
And so it is a sense of you knowing your own energy enough that when some energy comes in that derails you, that throws you off, you'll know, and you'll go back to hermit mode until something that comes in or aligns with you is actually what feels the best to your
yeah.
new self, to your true self, your higher self. And you'll know fairly rapidly. Is sense that everything's happening very fast too. So these are not lessons that are going to take you months and years to integrate at this point, because if people have been doing the work and healing, and we're really transcending, even with this back to the self transcendence, we don't need to feel like we have to constantly be in healing mode. We don't have to continue going to therapy and talking about our problems and getting healing. I feel at this point we're healed.
Yeah.
And it's starting to really start to talk to yourself differently and saying things to yourself like, I am healed, I am whole, everything is always working out for me. That's one of my favorite affirmations, to say affirmations to yourself, however it is that you actually want to be, and not to feel that that's some future version of you, but to feel that it's who you are now. And it may actually feel strange. If you want abundance, but you don't have any abundance, say out loud, I am so abundant.
Yeah.
And just that, you're forcing your reality to be what you want it to be, because that's how you actually feel. And so there's a lot of this really getting in alignment to what it is that you feel you deserve, is self-worth too, and knowing if you are healed, which people are more healed, I feel, than they think that they are.
Yeah.
And so if you are healed and you're whole, then you're going to force things in your reality to come to you that match that vibration. If you feel that you're constantly needing healing and you're not whole yet, you're pushing away abundance and you're pushing away opportunities and all of those relationships that could possibly be coming to you, and circumstances and communities, because of this ultimate feeling of it's not happening, or whatever you're actually telling yourself is what's going to show up.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I actually also am drawn in to mention that if you don't know your human design, I feel that would be really helpful for people to know their human design. And you can look up your type and read about it, because it's how you actually physically operate and make decisions. And it's interesting what we're talking about, which is a lot about hermit mode. And I'm actually a hermit opportunist, reflector, and human design. So you may have something in your human design chart that will inform you to really how you even specifically make decisions, because everybody operates slightly differently in this way.
Right. Absolutely. And it's
What is your
interesting.
human design?
It's interesting because I haven't done the human design chart. I haven't actually done the and I've heard it talked about many times, and I've felt called to it in the past, but I've never actually looked into it, so I don't know.
We'll find out.
I
Yeah,
was
we'll find out.
I was
And
about to say that's gonna be exactly what I do once we hop off the podcast, because I feel very called to understand how that plays an influence, right? Because I think it all does come back to knowing yourself in such a radical way that you have no choice but to take conscious control of your decision making. Of what your tendencies are, what your programs are, what your healing journey has been, right? And I love what you were saying about owning, I would say, the fact that, hey, I am healed, right? Because how many people do the healing work and they get stuck in the identity of, oh, I'm healing, right? Like they make the game out of I'm healing, and it's a forever cycle. It'll continue infinitely until we identify beyond the victim who is in need of healing into the embodying ultimately, I am the healed, whole, fulfilled, abundant creator of my reality, right? There needs to be a choice to step into that, because it's not, as long as we are healing, we are not healed. Like it's not going to manifest itself. That's not how the game works, in a sense. So it's a subtle choice that I think people need to make, and I think often gets lost in the healing spaces. People make a whole life about just healing, instead of, well, let me step into, I'm healed. Now, what does that look like? It's a whole new identity. It's a whole new game, a whole new reality.
it's a lot of power that you can actually start to feel within when you start to say you're healed, and you start to feel how it feels to actually have power, because we are creator beings and we are these very powerful beings. And what happens when you're raised in a program is the matrix will program you to be disempowered. And so it actually feels uncomfortable for a lot of people to step into power. And it's actually more comfortable to stay in trauma and to stay in a disempowered state, because that's what we're used to. And that's what's programmed to you to feel that way. And it actually is, I feel this is actually the most, one of the biggest things with Ascension is to feel comfortable feeling your own sense of power, and not to feel that that is ego, and not to feel that that is a bad thing. Because you can look at someone who looks confident from a third dimension perspective and say that person's really narcissistic and in their ego. And you look at people who are in positions of leadership, most of them have narcissistic tendencies, because most people who do go for anything in positions of power are not fully in the light, I'll just say. And we have that in our programming to start to feel like we can take up space in our life, feel that we can speak truth, feel that we can be fully empowered but not feel that we shouldn't have a right to be. There's that sense. If I take up too much space, I'll be too much for someone, or I'll be thought of in this type of way where people will think that I have ego. And it's a lot about worrying. I'm getting a lot about worrying what other people will think of you if you fully stand up and take up, because it's about being authentic and not feeling like you are going to be judged.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because of the people, and you're speaking to my own victim side, like the old self of, that was a big block in terms of my own stepping into my own power, was that, oh, I don't want to take up too much space. And it's like comes from a lack of feeling deserving of that space, right? And it's like, well, don't you want to own exactly who you are and take up the space that you're naturally going to take up when you're in your full authentic power? There's nothing that actually prevents me from being worthy of that besides my own inner critic, right? And we become so worried about the external critic when in reality the inner one is the ultimate. There's nothing anybody could say that I haven't said that's worse to myself, in a sense, right? And I think our own internal world then creates that external mirror of where we are in that anxious, hyper focused on the judgments of others, when in reality it feels like it is time to fully just let go and surrender any of that, right? And I think people do worry about becoming the narcissist type of personality, or they think it's egoic to own fully who they are, right? When in reality there's a big difference between ego and authenticity, right? I mean, somebody who is in maybe more of a lower vibrational state, or they're identifying themselves as a victim, if they see somebody who is fully empowered, I mean, maybe at times it can come off as ego, but predominantly a lot of people will see that with admiration, right? And so I think the only time it does come off fully as ego and fully as, oh, this person is a narcissist, is when we think that about ourselves. Like if we're stepping into our power fully, we're not going to emanate or radiate a vibe that is lower density. People are able to pick up on, there's something that this person is tapping into. Let me find that within myself. I see that, right? And so, I think we do the world a disservice when we're not willing to step into our own power in that way and ultimately create from that space, because that's where I think the true shifts in our reality are going to begin. And what we're stepping into on a collective scale, it does have to start at the individual level in terms of our stepping into our own authenticity and into our own power, because we don't have we don't- this is that's the victim consciousness is what has exactly got us to where we are with the matrix as it is in this reality. And maybe it was a necessary learning lesson, but at this point it no longer serves us, so we have to let it go.
Right. And so these tribes of what we're creating in the new earth are going to be full of everyone that is playing at an equal level. We're not going to have leaders in the new earth in this type of way, because everyone is showing up equally empowered. And then you just go where you're naturally gifted. You go where you naturally have skills, and everyone, some are builders, some are planners, some are the mothers, some are, it's going to be more communal type of living, and it's more back to a grassroots kind of living. And also what I'm getting is that, and it's a very kind of roundabout way of looking at things. So in the matrix, it's more about fitting in with the tribe and not being an individual so much. And I feel that in order to break out of the matrix, you find your own individuality and uniqueness and authenticity within it. And as you embody that and you raise your own vibration to that level, you'll start to attract in this roundabout way back to your tribe that is all those ones that have been doing that type of work on themselves. So you won't really align or even come across someone at that point that would be not in alignment with you, not in the same frequency match as you. You just would not encounter them, because they're not in your magnetic field. They're not
Right.
a vibrational match to you. So you would only vibrationally match to the ones that are in that alignment. And it actually becomes much easier to find them, because when you're empowered and you're speaking your truth, that's how you are putting your real true vibration out into the world, into the physical realm. So when I speak, and then I found you this way, because we're both showing up speaking our truth, and that's how you align to people that are on your frequency, because you are putting yourself out fully. And you don't have to be out on social media speaking truth. It can be anywhere. It can be in your daily life. But I feel immediately, as soon as you find that truth, you'll start to immediately repel people, and then you'll also start to align.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what it is you fully embodying and speaking is such an important thing, because there's such a what I see when I'm just looking into it here is how there's a block on the throat chakra of a lot of humans at this point. And probably because we were all collectively wearing masks for so long.
Yeah.
I feel that's probably directly connected to why that is. It's a direct block on many humans' throat chakras to keep you trapped in the program.
Absolutely.
Because if you were able to speak truth, you could immediately detach from the program. And that's why we've got such an awakening happening here. The ones that didn't fall in line, and the rebels, and the ones that didn't put the mask on, that saw the psyop for what it was, we're not going to do that. And so that's what really has created such a dramatic split and accelerated the ascension.
Exactly. And the throat chakra is the direct connection between the heart and the third eye. It's the heart and the spiritual realms, right? There is that necessity to speak truth, to be fully aligned within oneself, and ultimately create that reality that is based from the heart, right? And what we speak is what we create. Like the beginning was the word, that whole idea, right? So we are the direct creators of our reality with the word that is based in truth from the heart. So it all interconnects and all intertwines, and we need to be, I'd say, have the courage to allow that repelling, like you mentioned, to happen, right? Because I think naturally that's what occurs first. Like we have to almost clear the space for us to allow in the truth and the authenticity in our tribe to come in. But if there's no room for it because we're clinging on to the old, or we don't want our old conditions or old people, whatever it may be, to be repelled from us, then of course we're never going to attract it in. There isn't room for it. We have to clear room. We have to clear space, and allow the process to be as it is. I mean, it's not the I would say that process, then the repelling there can be a level of pain to it. Like you almost have to truly, it goes back to the idea of healing. I suppose you do have to feel in order to heal. That is a necessary thing. And with death, there is a necessary period of mourning. When you even, when you understand what the nature of death is, there's still attachments that are created, and to honor them, you can mourn them for what they were in that mourning process. I guess you choose how long you mourn, and it's going to be different in every scenario. But if you open yourself to that possibility of what's going to lie on the other side of that, well, then that's where the magic starts to happen, and you get to begin to really play in this reality. And if you can anchor yourself in truth, the world opens up. And I think that's the beauty of what we're seeing right now, because despite the chaos of this matrix, and somebody could look at the world from a standpoint of, this is like, if their reality is the matrix, right? If that is what their reality is, of course they're going to be in a state of fear or dissonance or whatever it may be, because that's the reality that's being shown through that. So you can look at the world and say it's pure chaos, but is this just the necessary death and transformation that is occurring in order for us to step into this new reality on a more collective level? I would argue that it is, and we have to see the shadow in order to have light like when we cast the light upon it, you're going to see what's in the shadows. So we're seeing it all, and that's all right. And how do we come out on the other side? Ultimately, we choose that.
Right. And I feel that you choose what I'm getting a strong message of Archangel Michael coming in, because
Mm,
they want me to talk about faith, and you're never alone. So when there's this feeling of going into hermit mode to do deep work and heal and not align to anybody else, and you'll be all alone. Well, you're never alone, because you have beings all around you. You have your guides, you have your team, you have your, for me, it's the extraterrestrials, it's the Pleiadians and the Arcturians, the angels. That is really what I feel that is the missing piece, is the faith, and is that this is a spiritual war. So we're in this constant, so much is happening around us that we're not able to visibly see. So what you can visibly see is lying to you at this point, basically, because you're only able to visibly see a very it's almost a simulation at this point, and it's almost like it's the past, that we're living in the past, and it's a movie that's moving very slowly, and it's not really real. And it's something where, as if you can recognize that what's happening in the unseen realms, where we're actually moving to, which is, okay, the idea that we're going to be moving into a higher dimension means that what's unseen at this moment is going to be seen to the ones that are ascending. Eventually. That's where we're going, because you'll start to, and even we were talking about this, being able to see the ships when you're in that vibrational alignment, to see them, being able to see dragons, being able to see what's really truly magic, what's truly about living in a magical dimension and magical realm, which is what's possible for us. Because the matrix is an illusion that was programmed to prevent you from seeing the truth of reality. And the truth of reality is not in the matrix. They make it look very grim and dire with sentinels and pods and all kinds of things. That is not exactly it. I mean, that is fear-based. So what's the truth is whatever we collectively decide it to be. And I feel like, well, a lot of us are getting visions and getting glimpses of where we're going and seeing beyond the veil and having these visions, your third eye is opening. So, and I do so many sessions for people, and I've talked to so many other starseeds that see collectively the same type of vision for the new earth. So we're building it already. Our higher selves are building it, and it already exists. And the idea is that we simply have to align to it and believe that that's real, and believe that that's more real than this false matrix simulation. And that's the work, is the belief and the faith and the magic. And so you really start to become more like a kid again, and come back to your imagination, and come back, because your imagination is real. Imagination isn't not real. It's if that's what you believe, then that will be true for you. But really, I've always felt that everything, if you can believe it, if you can think it, if you can read it in a book, if you can watch it on a movie, it's real.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
having that type of mindset is, I feel, the best thing to have, instead of, oh, that can't possibly be real because that's unbelievable, dragons and spaceships. And so, but that's what the matrix will program you to think. That's why they call it science fiction instead of science fact, because the science fiction is more closely actually the truth than anything else that we see. And we're starting to feel that way. I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like we're in the midst of a science fiction movie right now.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, that's the age of Aquarius.
Yeah. And it's unbelievable, because like you just said, I was going to say the veil is thinning. Like it's very thin right now. And I think I mentioned before we even hopped on the podcast, I step outside under a starry night, and immediately I see things moving up in the sky, and things in, there's all over the place, encountering the otherworldly beings in other dimensions in meditation. And when I go inward, or it's hard to contextualize it almost within a third dimensional experience and really get somebody to uh, tell it in a way where somebody is embodying that experience themselves. And maybe I will do that as I integrate this experience more. But when the veil thins, you begin to realize how little we actually know about reality, how little we have been, and just based on our programming, we have been taken away from our true essence, because it's that imagination that you mentioned. That's the natural state we're born into, right? The childlike wonder and imagination. It's drilled out of us from our programming at the very beginning within this system. So if anything, it's just a reclamation of our mind. And for me, I've been saying recently, it almost feels like it has to be beyond belief and into a knowing, right? For me, when I look at like belief, sometimes there might be the implied nature of, well, maybe that's not true. I only believe it. Maybe like I don't know it. So for me, I've been like, I have to know this. I have to know it's true. And I feel like that's what, with that level of faith, the veil has been thinning even more and been opening up in a very radical way. Because as we open ourselves radically to the world, to and just anchor in who we are, the world doesn't have a choice but to open itself back up. That's the nature of reality. So um and it creates quite, I would say, a magical experience, because despite what's going on in the matrix, and maybe I see something and I'll get caught in it for a couple minutes, at the end of the day, i i, I feel like I'm living in this fantasy world. And it's it's like a playground of infinite exploration. And for me, that gives extreme optimism in terms of what it is that we're moving to, because I know that this deeper reality is already present, and it's already being, like, the foundation has already been laid for the collective, um, I would say, manifestation of this reality, right? And so it feels the inevitability of stepping into it. For me, I mean, it's just a matter of time, I would say.
Yes, and it's also this feeling that we are holding the new earth frequency now as the awakened ones,
Yeah.
the ones that are holding a different frequency, and the knowing what you're talking about. I like that you said that, because it's what is the inevitability once you do lead yourself with faith and belief. Then what happens is, what I find, you have telepathy, you have synchronicities, you start to say things. And I am an energy reader, so I'm constantly reading energy and picking up on things from people that I couldn't possibly know. It's in the energy. So the energy starts to align itself, and you start to get this nonverbal but psychic type of activations, because we're all actually psychic. We're all supernatural. We're all really these very advanced beings. And when you start to reconnect back to that higher self through all of this process that we've been talking about, these abilities come back on also very strong, which also reinforce your beliefs and transcend the beliefs into a knowing, because you start to know everything that we're told is mostly lies. The history is a lie. The evolutionary state of humanity is a lie. And so you start to know the truth without needing an external source to tell you, other than your own intuition and faith and the synchronicities. And you simply know. And I feel like the vaccine, they're telling me to tell you this. They're telling me to mention this. The vaccine that permanently messes up your DNA is exactly for this reason, to prevent humans from this level of knowing and this level of truth within. Because when you have this level of truth within, that's how you can exit the matrix program completely. So by taking a vaccine that messes up your DNA, you're keeping yourself in the program.
Right, exactly.
Unknowingly, because of course they didn't lead with that and say that. You would have had to have known that.
Right.
And so it's a bit of a catch-22, but this is exactly it, is that this is the true awakening. And I just also do want to say that the spiritual communities have been very corrupted, because there has been a knowing that the awakening, the true awakening, was happening. And so they've had gatekeepers posted in these spiritual communities for quite some time that are knowingly still keeping you trapped in a false matrix that's spiritual, that looks spiritual, but actually that's all within. Your truest ascension and ability to be awakened happens within, without any of what has been programmed for you to think is the way to awaken. So it's kind of a very high level deception that we're up against here. And unless you're really talking and looking at people who are telling you that you hold all the keys and the ascension codes are all within you, you got to really look at everywhere you're getting information from and question it, and actually run it through your own intuition and start to really simply align to yourself and know that that's how powerful you are, is that nobody has to tell you anything. You can start to really know it all yourself.
Absolutely. And it's important to know that that truth, like pure truth, it only lives within. Like there is no amount of external source or truth or anything that is going to I would say, then I guess it's important to keep an understanding of what our beliefs are and what ideas we hold, and the willingness to let any of them go at any point for a deeper level of truth. And people can inspire that deeper level of truth, certainly, but it does all come back to, what is it that my own heart is saying? What is it that actually aligns within? And if something is holding us back, or there is, I think something in a lot of spiritual communities, whether we get sold on the idea of something like we already mentioned, like forever healing, or playing in victim identities, or playing in the game, the need to identify in this third dimensional egoic. I think a lot of our matrix is based on the game of identity to begin with. So the soul needs to hold on to a lot of these programs. If it's sold in a spiritual context, that's kind of a bit of a red flag, right? So, the willingness to go deeper beyond the who we think we even are, and the willingness to let that old self die, that has to be found within. All of that is going to be an internal game, and we can help others awaken to that path, certainly. But again, they have to find that ultimate truth within. They have to choose to walk that road. And there is no amount of, I guess, I remember seeing some sort of quote about the non-awakened person that are like reads scripture, and then the awakened person doesn't need the scripture, something along those lines, right? But there's a level of truth to it, to where like those texts and those teachers and all of those things, they can be very helpful on the path, but the path itself is you. Like it isn't out there. It isn't like there's nothing out there that you can't find within. So I think that needs to be our ultimate source, is the source within, and trusting in that on a radical level, because that's what's going to, I think, be where we shift on a collective level, is when that is what's finally embodied. Um, yeah.
And with that too, there's a sense that the types of healing modalities are going to start to fail you if you're aligned to ascension. So doing things like energy healing, doing Reiki, doing acupuncture, doing things that are for your physical vessel and your energetic auric field, they are going to heal you tremendously faster than the old modalities of talk therapy, of taking psych meds, which block your pineal gland. Everything is really designed to keep you unhealed. It's designed to keep you unawakened. And it will eventually stop working, because it's about, how do you actually fundamentally feel? Do you feel happy when you hear something, or do you feel fearful? And that is a much better way of discerning what's for you than what your thoughts might be telling you. Because the thoughts and the mental body is so targeted, especially with social media and with the amount of technology and the Wi-Fi and everything, chemtrails, everything, food, toxins. I could go on and on.
Yeah.
The water. So your mental body is basically almost, if you were living, especially in a city as well, I'll just say, if you're in a city environment, it's going to be pretty intense sabotage to your mental self, and negative thoughts may be something that you're constantly battling. That's what I'm getting. And so the negative thoughts have to be shut off, which is why one thing that many spiritual people will tell you to do is meditation, which I believe is definitely still something to do. I also feel that conscious breathing is another way to add to your meditation practice, because you have to start to connect to the body and the body consciousness. Mm-hmm. So taking deep conscious breaths, if you notice you don't breathe, start to breathe. And I feel this happens with people who are smokers or people who are vapors. And the mm-hmm. reason that they vape and smoke, it's because that's typically the only time of day that you're taking the deepest breath.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's about breathing, and it is very simple. And it's not to get, when we're talking about these types of concepts that might be way sounding like that's too much to do. I don't actually know how it sounds to people anymore, because right. This is my Same. Reality. So but I worked on healing myself for 20 years to get to this point. Yeah. So it's not like this all happens overnight, but the thing is that the Earth's vibration is different than it was 20 years ago. So if you were to start now, it's not going to take 20 years. It's not, because you have the accelerated help of the Earth and the light codes, and everything can click for someone at this moment much faster than it would have in the old Earth timeline.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because something I've been very called to do lately is each day I either will wake up for a sunrise or go out and view the sunset. And it's because when I do, I feel a shift within myself, and there is something that is coming into me just through that simple practice, right? And so I think we have the support of our natural environments, even if we're in a city, there's nothing stopping us from going and viewing a sunset. It's a very healing practice where you're going to get downloads that come in, where you're going to learn about yourself in a radical way maybe you didn't know before, right? And so we have the opportunities almost regardless of the environment to engage in these practices like you just mentioned. And so I think the smoking one is a perfect example, where I was just reading about that a week ago and thinking about how I think smoking for people is a very spiritual and sacred practice, because they are taking a moment to calm the body through this practice and breathe deeper and actually really sit with themselves in reflection as they're smoking. And, you can view it as, oh, that's just a way of coping with the reality. Maybe it is. Maybe that's how it started. But even the things that we view as crutches are there for us to actually use as if we choose to look at it with the lens of, okay, what is this teaching me? What is the lesson here? How can I integrate this onto a deeper level? And I think that's where we're at right now. We have such support from the frequency of the planet and the cosmos aligning in the way that they are, that this crash course, I think, that we kind of need in terms of ascension, it's right there. It's ready. Like, we need it and it's here. So can we step into it? And I think that's the golden question. I mean, you and I are stepping into it. I think anybody who's listening to this, there's a good chance they aligned with this frequency and that they're here for a reason, right? So I'd say we are stepping into it. And for me, that's beautiful. Like, let's go.
It starts with the individuals. It starts with us all doing it ourselves and not attempting to get anybody around you necessarily to also wake up, because it's about you are awake, and let that be enough. That, because our energy is contagious as well, I want to say. And there's another thing I did want to say about the smoking and about everything that we've been told is bad for us is quite inverted, actually, because it really fundamentally is, do you feel that it's bad in yourself? Because if it's not, and that's the moment of your day where you're smoking, and you feel at peace and ease and you're not in stress, then I would say that's probably helping someone.
Yeah.
And it's really about everything that we've been told. It goes to your mental body. And really, how do you feel? Because maybe you feel less stressed. Maybe you feel, and that is actually going to make you fundamentally healthier in the long run. So really, you got to throw all of it out the window. There's nothing that's the old earth rules that really apply to where we're going other than how you feel. And that's it. Because
Exactly.
I really don't think that your diet catches up with you, your habits catch up with you, unless you believe that they will. Unless you believe that what you're doing is not serving you, because that belief and that loop and that thought is more powerful than the actual thing that you're doing.
Exactly. It always has the energy that we attach to it, and that's what we internalize and ultimately create. I mean, that's exactly it. If somebody wants the scientific materialist definition, think of the placebo effect and how that interacts with the body, right? I mean, how can a sugar pill cure cancer? Well, it's belief, it's knowing, it's the mental body taking the reins here and creating the physical reality. It's exactly how it works. And there's never been a scientific explanation for placebo because it doesn't fit inside their materialist way of viewing the body as the machine that they do, right? So I think that's a beautiful way to take conscious control of our own bodies and our own practices. And I've been reading a lot of Rumi poetry as of late, and he has a beautiful poem called "Let Them Sleep," and it's about people who are not open to this new form of love that he's talking about and awareness. Let them sleep. That's okay. And I really resonated with it personally because it's like, yeah, it's not my battle to get people to awaken. Like, what am I going to get them to awaken to? Like it's an internal process. I can't awaken to what externally. Like there's a certain my own personal definition of freedom or awakeness or what. Like how do I measure that awakeness? There's so many factors and variables of that it's not worth that pursuit. You just have to be yourself fully and open yourself to awakening, and others will follow that lead, like you said.
And that's the contagious type of energy of when you're holding a frequency that's, and I feel maybe we did talk about this in the other podcast, but it's coming up because it feels worth re-mentioning that you being of a higher vibration walking around is enough. Yeah. And that if someone is meant to awaken in this lifetime, they will. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you say or don't say to them. And I also do find that some of it is that in order to really fully surrender to an awakened state, it does shock your system. And some souls would not be able to quite handle that level of shock. Because Morpheus says it too in the Matrix, that once a soul has reached a certain age, we risk, I don't know exactly what he says, but it's a famous part of the movie where you risk really damaging them because it's too much trauma to the soul to start to tell someone everything that they've ever been told in their whole life is not what it is. It would be too much for a lot of people. And if you think of maybe it's someone's parents where they're at a certain age and they just cannot handle things, you got to let them sleep, like you said. Let that, because it would be too much otherwise. Yeah. And if they're meant to start to make incremental changes and come around on their own, you hold space for that. But I feel the sense of forcing anybody isn't our job. It's really simply just to embody it and know that that's enough. And I can also feel the difference too, when you do start to embody this frequency, it is a different way of operating in the world, because I've noticed two things: that your vibration is going to trigger people around you. And it is that sort of Agent Smith effect, where you can start to notice that people look at you strange, or that you have weird reactions, almost to the point of that people may even come up and start something with you. And I've not had this experience myself. I have a couple times. It was very strange. And one
Yeah.
was in a metaphysical crystal store, believe it or not. And so it can be anywhere because there's a lot of spirits in those stores, by the way.
Right.
And I do feel like we have to be really mindful of our own vibration. And also, if you do start to feel unsafe, to remove yourself from a situation, because when you're at such a different frequency than everyone around you, yes, you are planting seeds energetically in their field to attempt to get them to awaken without even saying anything at all. But also, that experience for those people can be very overwhelming because they can actually fear you, because you're bringing up a lot of their own demons to the surface, or a lot of their shadows to the surface. So it's almost the sense of being very aware of your energy. And if you start to feel like someone might do something, to remove yourself. And you're not crazy to think that way, because that is actually how this seems to be turning out for people, which is why now we're getting, and I had this message pretty recently, that it felt like we need to actually now start to align to our soul tribe, our soul families, and get into these communities, because we have been doing the grid work. We have been raising the vibration on the crystal grid. And wherever you've been on the earth, that's what that means, is that you've been there for a reason, holding light and anchoring light codes. And most people that I work with, they are very consciously aware that that's what they've been doing. But now they know that they are meant to align to their oversouls, which is usually 6 or 12 other people that are the exact same soul frequency as you, that feel like your true tribe, and go find those people to be with those people. And that's what we're doing now. So I feel like just actually there's nothing that you need to do other than keep that in mind and know that it's going to manifest. So there's this allowing, and it's a flow. And this isn't fear-based. It's actually a beautiful thing that's happening, because the fear and the matrix reality and the having to shield yourself and your vibration, your frequency, we're moving away from having to do that. So we're all getting the downloads collectively to start to align to the ones that are going to be with us, so that we don't feel so alone and isolated. And that is what we're all getting. So it does seem like it's what we're manifesting. That's where we're going.
Right.
Like your higher self is always laying the trail. It's always telling you this is the path.
Right.
So
little breadcrumbs of truth into the higher frequency. Absolutely. I definitely have noticed that within my own reality of people coming in, and obviously moving to a new physical location is a pretty direct manifestation of, okay, this is where I need to be now. Like, you just kind of pick up and and there was a deep, if I were to, it's fascinating because I thought I was going one place, and then I had an intuitive hunch of, oh, I need to stop out in Montana first. And here I still am. Like, it was just sort of an internal knowing. I didn't have any rational reason to come out this way beyond what the heart was telling me of, yeah, go out to Montana first. Like, I thought I was going south, and I didn't go south. So, but it's, it was the heart speaking, knowing of this aligning, right? This alignment process. And I think if we can all willingly take those little leaps of, I don't know why I'm doing this, but sort of allow the heart to lead. The brain can catch up later. It doesn't need to know, contrary to what it says, it doesn't need to know. And then just trust in that, and it always aligns. It always works out. And that's one of those affirmations that we can tell ourselves. This leap is going to align me to where I need to be. And if you say that and you take the leap with that that level of embodiment, of course that's it's going to align for, like, because you just created that reality. So I think if we can all do that, that's it feels like a necessary next step, I would say, for a lot of people, like you were just saying.
It feels like where we are laying the pathways out of the matrix.
Yeah.
We're forming the pathways out, because the pathways that we've been told work for us do not work. They lead you back into the material physical trap. Yeah. And the only way to get out of the material physical trap is to start to go in the unseen and following the heart and following where you feel more free as well. So you're going to feel free, but that's also going to feel, to me, in the energy, it feels like you're jumping off a cliff.
Yeah.
Or it feels like you're jumping out of a plane without a parachute. That's how it feels. That's how it will feel. And trust that you are creating a new pathway that's a faith-based pathway. And when you go down that path, that's your angelic higher timeline that's more aligned to source energy and your divine creator self, because you have faith in yourself that you can create something from nothing, which is you being a creator. And so that is more powerful because you're not lowering your vibration into fear to doubt it. Because if you doubt it, you're doubting yourself and you're doubting your creator power and you're doubting your faith.
Right. And then you ultimately don't create.
And you don't, and it doesn't get created. And you go back into this other pathway that's already really kind of, what I'm seeing is a artery there's a word for it. When
Clogged?
the artery decays, or what's the word?
Oh, erodes? No, that's not it. I don't know. It's
Dystrophies is a muscle that's dystrophied that doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's kind of how they're showing me the matrix is doing that to everyone. So what's happening is what you actually even thought was supposed to be your path isn't it. And so it's forcing everyone. It's kind of like a whole nervous system that seems that it's dying, actually. And so there won't be a path in the matrix anymore. This is the only way, because the split earth means that only one earth is going to be our reality and the other one is going away.
Yeah.
And that's the cold hard truth that I feel can be very scary to hear that, but I have been getting this message that it really is about, we've got to choose the path of survival for who the new humanity is going to be, because we're ascending so much that we're not even probably going to identify as humans. Yeah. We're going to be this new crystalline galactic type of species that's much more multidimensional, and we're doing it now. So that is why it's, to come back to what we were saying in the very beginning too, is letting that old self totally die, because it has to, in order for you to survive in the new earth.
Absolutely. Well, and the matrix programming itself, and this is something I was thinking about the other day, it goes beyond, it programs us to even, I would say, release the need for self-preservation and our own survival instincts. Like, it hijacks that in its purest sense, to where our survival is interlinked with the matrix survival. So if the matrix is dying, and we are identifying as that matrix itself, as the source of it, as the energy of it, then we are dying with it. And like, that is, we will go against our own even self-preservation instincts that exist to keep this system alive, instead of actually aligning with, well, who am I beyond this matrix? And even beginning to question that, right? That's, a lot of people can't even begin to fathom that answer if they are interlocked within it. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's their path, and that's what they're here to learn and experience. Who am I to question that if that's what they actually came here to do? And they're, kind of like you said, where some people, like, they wouldn't be able to handle that level of truth of self beyond this system. Like, that's okay. There's no judgment for that path if that's what somebody chooses. But for those, I'd say, especially for those who find themselves listening to this conversation, there's a reason they're doing so. It's because there is a path that has emerged beyond the trap of the game we've been playing within. And now's the time to actually, like you said, jump off the cliff. Like, we ain't got a parachute, but we don't need a parachute because we're learning to fly. Like, that's exactly it.
Learning to fly. And also, we've done this before. I want to say, the ones that are at this level, the ones that are listening, that are here for Ascension, you're here because you chose to be here, because we've done this in other realms and other dimensions, and it's in your DNA to know exactly how to do this. We have ascended other other civilizations before Earth. And that's why we volunteer to be here right now, because it's instinctual. It's sort of this sense of getting a mother that has a baby. You just know how to raise and nurture the baby. We just know how to ascend humanity into a higher timeline. So it's going to come very easily and naturally to you. And also the ability to lose people and this sort of toughness that you're going to have to endure that is also built into you and your frequency at this point. And know and trust that they are on a different pathway for themselves. And that's
Right.
okay, because we're really here for the ones who are building this one.
Yep,
And
exactly.
that it takes a lot of spiritual stamina, soul strength to be able to handle
Yeah,
this.
absolutely. Kind of embodying that warrior archetype in a way. And, with on a soul level, and recognizing that it's not the path of ascension is not necessarily easy, but it does flow when we allow it to, right? It does have its own, um, we'll have our own, I guess, run-ins with the matrix, or, again, temptations of wanting to fall back on the sword, or, we'll have to have necessary periods of death and mourning in order to fully ascend. But, it begins to flow and take on a life of its own when we choose that path and we step into a knowing of what that path actually means and who we are on a deeper level, because we're so far beyond this human form. Like, that, like, who we are, it extends way beyond what we are actually physically taught to identify with. And so if that doesn't excite somebody, like, I don't know, it's tell them, like, it's just that thought alone for me. It's like, okay, let's go and let's explore this new realm, this new playground, and create from there, because the possibilities really are infinite once we take into this ourselves into this creator reality. um, because it's a whole nother level to this game. It's like, you unlock a new level in a video game or something. You haven't explored it before, but now you go and get to, like, have fun with it, enjoy it, flow with the process.
That's a really good way to put it too. It is that unlocking a new level and not knowing what it's going to be, what
Yeah.
the environment's going to be. But it is a feeling of trust and flow
Yeah.
above anything else. And it is easier. This is not I feel the most difficult part of ascension is letting go of the old.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
once you do that, everything is easier. But I feel those strings and those chords to certain, maybe it's to people, maybe it's to what you used to do as a purpose. When you really step into your true self, you really align to your true purpose. And these gifts, some people always want to know what I'm going to do in the new earth. And what you're going to do is who you are. It's all one and the same. So there isn't this sense that you have to go learn a new skill. It's within you already. So
Yeah.
you're just kind of uncovering your truth within to be who you naturally are. And then that is your path as well. So the
Exactly.
purpose is the same too.
Exactly. Exactly. It's that old adage of, you don't need to do anything, you just need to be. And I think that's exactly the frequency of the new earth. There's nothing to do. What is there to do outside of be yourself? And I think that, like, that authenticity and that truth, that's like the new form of currency, which currency is really just energy. And that's what we exchange truth and love and authenticity and beauty, and for this experience and who we are. And that's the foundation of the new earth. There isn't a need to, and I think we're so caught in the conditions and programs of, oh, there is, like, the way society operates. Like, if somebody were to ask, what's the purpose of that? It's like, oh, that's the way it's just the way we do things, right? And it's like, that's sort of the mindset people have. But if you were to ask on, I guess, on a deeper level, what's the purpose of the way we're currently operating? It's a much tougher question to answer if you're going beyond, well, this is just the way we do things, right? So, I think we don't need to have a material definition of what the new earth looks like, in a sense, and define it by the constructs that have trapped us in the past, because then that's not the new earth. We're putting constraints and limitations on something that you can't really create from a space of limitation in itself. So a deep level of trust and surrender is involved, that it's a manifestation from our heart and trusting in what that'll bring.
Right. And it's a foundation laying that we're doing.
Yeah.
So we're laying the foundation because we are dismantling the old to build the foundation for the new and bring in the souls and lay the foundation for these next souls that are coming in. They are going to have total different ideas and abilities and visions, and they're going to come in and know exactly how to then even build even more on the foundation that we're laying. So we think of it as we're already doing what we came here to do by simply being aware of our programming and aware of the karma and aware of the paradigms that we are dismantling, because it's about, we're not going to continue those old paradigms because we are now aware of them. We're not living unconscious to them. And that is the work that most of us on this wave came here to do. So we're doing it.
Exactly. And I think for a lot of people, that can almost be a sigh of relief, because sometimes I think a lot of people look for like, oh, they see like the chaos of the world and the need to like almost be the world savior. And it's like, there's chaos within the matrix. And how do I alleviate it? How do I end this suffering and this and that? And like, if we're going with that mindset, there's always something more to do. There's never ending, right? We're going to be attending to a million things while attending to nothing at the same time, ultimately. And it's kind of the paradox of the more we try and do, the less we're going to actually achieve in this sort of sense. So I think it can be a sigh of relief to almost step back and take acknowledgement of just the being ourselves and being awake in this time and dropping seeds and of love and truth and authenticity. That in itself is enough. It's about holding the frequency and holding the alignment and having that alignment as the matrix continues to unfold and maybe attempts to infringe more, because I'm sure it's going to. I have no doubt that it's going to attempt to do something. That's the game it seems to play. And maybe I'm just creating that reality by saying it. I don't know. But at the same time, if it were to do that, holding your own frequency and holding a level of peace and stability within the matrix's chaos, if you will, right? And I think that's ultimately enough in itself to create the change that we're talking about.
I feel that is being in a feeling of peace and surrender and flow in the midst of chaos around you, or seeming chaos around you. Because I will say at this point, depending on where you are in the ascension, it really does not feel that it reaches you.
I agree. Yeah.
So you can feel that something is happening out there in the chaos, but it doesn't actually affect you and your inner peace. Mm-hmm. And exactly. That's what we're holding that frequency.
Exactly. I feel the same way. I mean, I look at everything that's gone on within the matrix this past half year. A lot of it, it's like, no, I mean, obviously there's people impacted by things and whatnot. There's suffering created for people within the matrix of, who are very attached to these things. And, I hold empathy for that. There's some things I just like, well, it doesn't affect my vibration and how I choose to go about my day and respond to my surroundings. So it, in a way, does it touch me? Not, I would say lean more towards no, like it, because it isn't impacting the frequency, and the frequency is the ultimate creator of reality. So in a way, you do become untouchable when you reach a certain level and you don't let these things impact you. So yeah, if anything, that's a sense of stability I think people can really hold on to right now and ultimately surrender to.
I feel, yes. And I feel like also it's worth mentioning, there is not this feeling that you have to be back and forth. I hear this from different spiritual people that feel Some feel we have to continue to go back and forth. We have to be in the 3D and we have to be in the physical reality matrix. And we can also still be in 5D or even 9D or wherever we're going.
Yeah.
We don't have to actually be in the 3D physical matrix at all, is what I'm here to say. And that's always been my message. And I feel that that's something that, because it does grip people to such a level, if I don't know what's happening out there, I won't know what's happening. And that's actually the point, is to get very much back to grassroots, very much back to no technology, no interference with the mainstream whatsoever. And and if that's not really quite graspable yet, then there may still be some lesson in the matrix to learn.
Yeah.
There may still be some reason that you're still connected to it in that directive a way, because the ones who really truly are ascending have absolutely no connection to it whatsoever.
Absolutely. There's the beauty in the saying of "I know nothing," like right, and that's
It feels that way, and that's probably what's very uncomfortable, because you do start to feel, again, that self-transcendence feeling that you don't have an identity, because you only have an identity in the matrix. And you really let go of your identity to be in your ascended body.
Exactly.
So you don't know who you are, but you have a feeling, and you feel who you are. And that is a strange thing to align to. It's also really getting used to a different frequency of a actual physical lightness in your vessel. You do not feel as dense. You do not feel as heavy. You do not feel as physically dense and heavy and weighted in your vessel.
Yeah.
And that can feel uneasy.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean everyone's losing a lot of weight. I don't mean that. I mean,
Right.
you probably will naturally, because that's something that does happen. But it is about feeling more empty, because you're more energy. It's about recognizing we're energy. We're not this dense carbon, flesh and blood meat sack. That's how it feels. And so when you don't align with being that, you will physically feel different. And that does take some getting used to. That's why the light codes help your physical vessel start to adjust to your new light body. And that's probably also, if you're dealing with that in the physical self, having physical symptoms in any way, headaches, digestion problems, all types of things. You can actually, when I had a Kundalini activation, my whole lower spine went out, and I was laid up for a week. And it was because my spine had to realign, had to readjust, and had to, so it's not, it actually can be physically unpleasant. And that is part of ascension. So depending on where you are, it's a whole process to exit the old body and get into your truest energetic frequency.
Absolutely. And I definitely resonate with that. It's funny, the last month or so, it's like, I just feel like doing backflips, just crazy. I've never done a backflip, but it's like, there's a lightness I feel within myself that is that wasn't present before. And it's not like I've lost any weight. I'm already skinny. It's not like I've put on excess weight either. It's sort of just been like, it's a different energy within oneself that we can feel. And there isn't a need to, like you said, there isn't a need to have I guess a rational identity beyond just what is the feeling that I am embodying, and can I be with that feeling? Is that enough to not even need to identify it? And I think a pillar of the new earth is lack of a need to identify and rationalize all of these um I guess ways that we are embodying this frequency, right? And this, because it does go beyond what we know. And maybe we'll be able to rationalize it later on, maybe that's coming down the line, but at first it's just about the embodiment, and then how we rationalize and share that with others, and we learn through our embodiment process, right? It's like anything, you're the student before you're the teacher. So we have to be students of the new earth in a way, as we step into this reality and just let it show us what it's here to show us. And then we can help through our own learning process, we can bring that to others. And I think that's exactly what we're doing. And we're able to have this conversation, and people are able to listen in and pick up on things, because maybe there's things we've experienced that somebody is just starting on their path of, oh, I recognize that lightness in my body. Wow, that makes a lot of sense, and it connects a dot, right? Yeah, and but that goes to say anybody can be our teacher, right? And somebody else who's talking about this concept is going to have a new earth experience that maybe I haven't experienced or you experienced, and we all learn from one another in this sort of shared collective story that we're creating and manifesting, which is, I think, the ultimate beauty of this.
It is, and it's also a feeling of unidentifying with your own past. That's
Mhm.
some other aspect of it that I've heard, where you start to lose memories or have brain fog, or your words don't come as fast, that type of thing. Because it's interesting, we are becoming much more telepathic. So the words may start to fumble, may start to not make sense, and or you may start to feel very disconnected from your past up until your moment of this activation.
Mm.
And the memories may start to fade. And I have heard that that's unnerving sometimes, but it's also part of the process,
Right.
because you think of yourself as having memories, or having all of it has formed your identity. And if we have to shed our identity, those memories will start to get muted. And to me, at this point, it feels more like a past life that I lived up until 2019,
Wow.
2020.
Yeah. Same.
And so whenever the moment was, and so that was my past life. And now you're in your higher self ascended body. And that was you, but it feels very, very distant and far away.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is that concept of past life. For me, it's almost like I've been kind of waking up in the mindset of each day is in a new life itself, like living in the moment as if I have already died, and this is the new life, right here. And all of the past versions of self, even the experiences of yesterday, a whole completely different energy body that was. I'm not, that's not me anymore. I'm a whole different, in a whole different reality, right? And I think that goes to show you the nature of what we're moving into. Of, we
Yeah.
have to let those things go and let that past self go. And it does feel like a whole, before 2020, that feels like an eternity ago. Like I don't even, like, I don't remember what it was like to live in that body that I was in 2019. Like it's a completely different reality. I can't, the energy almost feels foreign in a
It
way.
does. It does. It's entirely different. It was not we definitely have quantum jumped since then
Yeah.
multiple times.
Yeah.
And it is a feeling of becoming multidimensional. And when you do get activations and codes, integrating them pretty quickly, so that is also activating your feeling new every day, feeling different every day. Because if you have an experience where, when someone may come in to test you to see if you may go back to your old programming and you don't, that's a code that you're now integrating, that then ascends you very fast, very rapidly. And you start to remember your power, remember all kinds of things start to come on for you. And even in encountering someone else like this, doing this interview, and we're exchanging codes, and we're remembering our fundamentally our true selves together. When you're with someone else that's also awakened, that's
Mhm.
also a very powerful exchange of energy. And so it is a total different type of reality that we're in. And until you're actually physically experiencing it like this,
Mhm.
it kind of, there is a level of diving in and experiencing it in this physical way, instead of thinking about it as if
Yeah.
it's what we're doing, but we're just trying
Yeah.
to think about it instead of actually live it.
It goes beyond the almost capabilities of the third dimensional mind and the way that we've been programmed to even, construct our reality and our lives and our identities, right? It's this whole new way of being. And I would say it's a remembering of who we are on a deeper, on a, when we ascend, in a sense, there's a higher self, like, and this is an old spiritual truth of the higher self, but now we are actually able to embody that on a much deeper level than we have been before. And how we're going to do that? Well, we can't rationalize it. So let's just be it. And let's, if once we try and overthink and overcomplicate it, that's when we're probably not embodying it. Like if we're trying to structure it too much or keep it within a certain box. Um, so I think people can just, I'd say the lesson is to open our hearts up, trust in where that's going to bring us, and go from there. Because where that goes, well, the brain doesn't necessarily need to know as much as it cries and screams that it wants to.
Yes, it's following your inner knowing and following your heart.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Exactly. So Laura, we're at about an hour and a half. This was fantastic. I feel like we could easily keep going for another hour and a half if we wanted to. But I want to be mindful of your time. So where would you go to, or where would you send the listeners to if they they want to interact with you, or if you have any other last thoughts or things that are coming in as well, just sort of, what you feel is on the horizon for yourself, and, as you sort of are flowing through this process. And I don't know, I guess whatever comes to heart, you is, I guess, what I'm asking.
Right. I feel very drawn into wanting to start to do some kind of in-person community building in some way. And because that is such a theme right now, because that's the inevitable timeline. So there is a sense of wanting to connect with others in a in-person type of way. And right now I do offer one-on-one sessions. So you can find that. It's on my link tree on all my social medias. So you can find it that way. Also, I will say we are up against such a spiritual war that there are quite a number of imposter accounts
Yeah,
of
I've
me
noticed
everywhere.
that. I get
And
followed by one
so
almost every day.
I hear that from people. So I only have one account on every Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's at the Laura Faye. TheLauraFaye. And
Okay.
it's in my link tree. I only have one. I would never contact anyone for readings, but they are out there doing this because it's a tactic to impersonate light workers, it seems. And I love to do the sessions. I feel we really can get to exactly what someone's purpose is, what someone is here to do in the ascension, and very quickly within a session. So I do offer that. And I feel like what I'm getting the most though is I've been doing these sessions now for a couple of years, and it seems that most everyone is inclined to start to build a community in some way. So I'll just continue to say that because we are manifesting it. And I know light workers and starseeds, we are spread out from others. So you may feel very, very isolated and not know that it's actually in the collective consciousness that we all want to start to build these communities. So they are happening.
Beautiful.
And yes, so that's what I feel I'm drawn into, starting to manifest that and starting to help others manifest it for wherever you are on the earth.
Absolutely. Well, I feel the next time we have a conversation on a podcast, the communities will have been created, or they'll be in the foundational phase or some sort, because I feel the same exact way, where it feels like the groundwork is being laid for them, and they are, because even people I am meeting and talking to here in Montana, they're yearning for the same thing, like a deeper community. And we've had conversations about this on the podcast, in person, all over the place. So the fact that that is such a strong desire right now tells me that that's exactly what is coming next. And, it's this deeper interconnection with one another in the physical. I think we've been able to align it within ourselves and align ourselves to feel more whole and interconnected with as one. But now that's the physical manifestation of that does feel like it's gonna become present. So I'm excited for that. That means beautiful things are on the horizon then,
And they can happen very fast because of how many of us are feeling it at once. That's how they manifest. So keep speaking it out loud and putting it out there that that's what we want and that's what you will get. That's what will happen.
Exactly. It could knock on the doorstep that the second we hop off of this podcast, right? I mean, that's the
It
beauty of it.
happens that way. And that is how effortless it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I always say this, if someone wants to manifest something, it's not showing up, just take a nap, because that's the best thing to do. There's nothing to do, because trust, you've already laid the groundwork. You've already put it out there. You already know what you want. And all you really have to do is trust and have faith. And that is it.
Exactly. And then it'll flow on in,
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't operate on the linear timeline that we necessarily are used to operating on. So when it comes in, it'll be exactly when it's meant to. So
yes. And you'll feel it. And you'll feel it in your heart, in your vessel.
mm-hmm. Exactly. And when I guess it's important too to say, when we almost desire it so strongly to the point where we're coming at it from a space of lack, that actually repels it. So I guess we do need to be mindful of not overly attaching to, I need it to show up now. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And then, feeling hopeless that, oh, it's not here yet. It's not going to come. And then ultimately that's the reality we create, because we're from a space of lack. Right. So I think maybe we already talked about that, but I think it's
Right.
important to note.
Also, it will surprise you too when you believe that you're manifesting something, but something even better than that comes along. Because that's what I notice is happening too, is that you think you want one thing, but actually you get presented with something even bigger and more than you thought that you could. And I feel that that's also part of it, is that in order to manifest what we are attempting to bring in, which already exists, but it's way bigger than what we're actually able to conceptualize.
I agree. And I was saying this past week, dreams that aren't big enough, that means, or dreams that aren't considered crazy by other people, they're not big enough in themselves. Right. So I think, holding on to this collective and individual dream of what it is we're moving towards, and knowing that there's going to be people who think that it's some sort of impossibility. Yeah, people are going to think that. Of course they are. But that's the nature of what we're creating here. But that's where the beauty is, in knowing how possible the seemingly impossible is. So,
and it's probably the things that I get to end with this is just to say that if things aren't showing up that you believe you've been manifesting, it's likely because you've been manifesting too small. And your higher self knows that's not going to show up for you, because you're actually meant for so much more.
Absolutely. Think big for ourselves. Own our
Think
worth,
big,
right?
Dream big. And yeah, because it is that level of impossible that is the new earth.
Exactly. Know our self-worth. Like, say, hey, I'm deserving of this impossible. What's preventing it from coming on in, besides my own self-limitations? Right?
Yes. Because the guides and they want to surprise you. So allow yourself to also be surprised by what shows up.
Beauty. That's the beauty of it. Beauty in the unexpected surprises, and just letting it flow in. And what a beautiful time. I'm feeling very aligned and energized after this chat. I don't know. There's my plan for the rest of the evening is to go out, watch a nice sunset over the mountains, just sit and be and present. So it's no surprise.
Beautiful.
No surprise
Yeah,
you're having this conversation. That. It's super aligned, feeling very optimistic after it.
Good. And that's it, that's the feeling to get to.
Exactly.
Where everything is exactly as it's meant to be.
Full alignment. Yes. We're exactly where we need to be. Nowhere else but right now. So, let's own it. So
I love it.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for having me again. It's been really great to check in, and it's a very important time. So
yeah, absolutely.
We have a few months left of this year. And it's like you said, I mean, this is the time to start to get rid of anything that's out of alignment and bring in what really is truly you.
Shedding the unnecessary layers. That's definitely, that's what I've been working on. And I'd say behind the scenes for the last several months. And it's been beautiful to engage in that process. And, I'm excited for whenever the next podcast is. I know it'll align and flow in exactly when it's meant to. But I always enjoy the conversation and the work that you're doing. It's very much aligns with my own heart and what I am seeing in the world, and is very affirmative to, I think, the direction that we're moving in. So anybody who's listening, and maybe this is the first time hearing you, I encourage everybody to go to your social medias. I'll put the correct link in there, not the
Great. Thank you.
imposter accounts. It's funny. I think it's the two accounts that I actually get followed by the most that are imposters are yours and Sean Stone. There's like 7 million
Oh,
Sean Stone
wow.
accounts as well. So I remember when I first followed him, I got followed by like 5 fake accounts on the first day. It was the same with you. So I'm like, all right, it's fascinating. So but yeah,
Well, it's a spiritual war. That's what I say. But
yeah.
it's a discerning practice as well to start to read energy and to know, okay, this doesn't feel right. That's not real. So
Nope.
you can always spin it to know there's something happening for the light.
Exactly. It's a positive. It's a positive. It means you're doing something right as well. Like you're holding such a high frequency that the natural polarity that's being created is people need to create some sort of imposter to, I don't know what their intention is, I guess, but it's just fascinating. I mean, it shows you're doing something right. So
Yes.
um, but
Well, thank you.
awesome. No, thank you. And thanks to all the listeners for tuning in. And we shall see you all on the next episode.